go. All right, guys. Hello and welcome back to the Gospel of Comics. I am your host, the Church of Failure, and with me, as always, is the co-host, Ayrton McCarthy. How you doing today, man?
I'm good. I'm not fired yet, so let's get it rolling.
Well, we're also joined by two very special guests, Donna McCarthy and R.L. Lilly. Say hello, guys.
Hiya.
Hi there.
Donna,
How you doing?
Donna and Robert have joined us today to talk about their upcoming project, the Alma Mater. Would you like to give a brief introduction as to what that is for our audience?
Actually, we're going to talk about the Collered, Kitten, which is our joint project. Alma Mater is a book that I'm releasing separately, but me and Robert have written a book, The Collered Kitten, which is an erotic horror, which Robert knows lots and lots about. Don't you, Robert?
Yep. The Collar Kitten basically follows the events of a young lady called Crystal, who's basically tired of her existence and is looking for a better life, but is willing to risk anything to gain it.
Absolutely, yeah.
It's quite dark, it's quite erotic, and it's quite horrific. So it's
brutal.
Brutal.
Yeah, absolutely brutal, but amazingly so.
And the name of that was what again?
The Collared Kitten.
The Collared Kitten. I'm sorry. Becky sent me this cover to pull up. We'll just blame her. Do we have any kind of do we have anything I need to bring up to showcase that, or is that just a work in progress right now?
It's actually a work in progress, isn't it? At the moment, still we're editing.
Okay. Well, yeah, I'll pull that down. We'll talk about the Alma Mater a little bit later if we have time. But yeah, absolutely. So when you guys got together to start this project, how did you come about that particular relationship?
You go, Robert.
Basically, Donna was just talking to me about various ideas that she was having for an upcoming book, and I was just giving my opinion and where I thought it could go. And then she asked me to come on board. She liked what I was coming back with, and from there it's basically grown. The document, as it started out, has become a book, and we've been able to work on it at the same time, and the whole story sort of grown into what we have now. So it's quite exciting.
Literally, I was asking him his advice on certain aspects of an idea I had. And his writing was so eloquent, and it was literally, I was reading pages from the book. So it just felt natural to me to say, look, it was a joint project from the start, really, because it developed that way. And it's been really cool, actually. We haven't even argued, and that's amazing, because we actually argue a lot, don't we, Robert?
Absolutely.
We haven't argued about the book.
But it was, very smooth.
So, I have a question. Sorry, Church.
Okay. You're good.
So, horror erotica. Where does that blend of genre come from?
You're kind of roboting a little bit there, but yeah, I think that came through.
Cool.
But he was asking where the blend of genres came from. Was it just your individual interest, or was it just how the story kind of crafted from how you were discussing it with one another?
For me, it was how it developed. It was never intentional to write an erotic horror. Right. It was just the way the actual story developed. What about you, Robert? What did you think?
Yeah, I totally agree that the premise of the story relates around it so well. Being that as the title sort of gives you, it's a collar kitten, sort of gives you a feel for it. Erotica is just obviously fabulous to write about. I really enjoyed that. And the thing I think, because I'm going to use the word, sorry, because I'm a virgin writer, it's been great for me because I don't have that fear that some writers seem to have about using this. I just give it as it is, So I found that quite easy.
He absolutely is. It's like new blood. For a writer for me, all his words. I've said this to him before. He's so brave, and he's actually taught me loads. You know, when you get jaded with writing novels, get jaded with it, but he's taught me to be so much more brave now. He's such a brave author. I think people are going to love it. I just hope they don't distinguish my writing from his and say, "What's that load of crap about my writing?" and say, "Robert's is brilliant." He's very brave. He's a very brave writer. I love it.
Well, one thing that I can say, just to kind of harken back to the original question about your partnership, when I started doing this show, I didn't have a definitive co-host. I just had plans to bring people on as often as possible, and some random person on Twitter that I had never interacted with apparently was a little bit deep in his cups in the evening and decided to throw his hat into the mix, and that's how
Had a few pints.
that's how our little co-host situation worked out, and it's been a good one. So sometimes the best partnerships come from the strangest places and the weirdest scenarios. So I find that really interesting.
Yeah. Now, do you guys find the kind of the contrast of the style almost liberating in how you're writing them?
I definitely do. I don't know about you, Robert, but I definitely find it liberating. Um, the erotic horror is extremely liberating because you can't really hold back, but you still have to be careful. You can't really hold back, so you don't, and you need to hope that you're the sort of person that wouldn't cross those lines. And luckily, neither one of us does naturally cross those lines. So it's for me, it's been very liberating. I don't know about Robert, but I've loved every second of it.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
it was great. There was times when I was sort of saying, "Can I go here?" And Donna was, "Go there, just do it, and let's see what happens." And when I went there, she said, "Oh, well, it's pushing the boundary, but that's fine."
Yeah.
That sounded
What it makes me well, what it makes me think of, because I'm a musician, it kind of makes me think of like symphonic heavy metal, like the blending of those two genres that you wouldn't think would match. But when you, from a music standpoint, when I've written something in two styles that you don't think are going to mesh together, I kind of have that same sort of like almost freeing sensation of like, oh, I can take this in places I never thought of. So I was curious.
I'd love to listen to symphonic heavy metal. Actually, that sounds awesome.
Well,
That sounds
uh,
awesome. I think it sounds cool.
no, it does. One thing that I wanted to kind of jump in with is just when because the show is about comic books, the graphic novel medium, sequential art as almost American mythology. We really focus on storylines and stuff like that. But one thing we don't really talk about as much as we probably should is the artistry that's put into it. And with independent comic books, first time writers, people that are going out on a limb to try and be heard, a lot of crowd-funded projects, a lot of just independent publishers and stuff like that. The stories you get are so much more vivid and risk-taking and exciting and just worthwhile to read because they're not beholden to the demands of a big publishing firm like Marvel or DC or a character
Yeah,
with 80 years worth of history that they have to stay true to. And that's one of the things that I've always appreciated about even if you go into it looking at amateur sports, college football or something like that, those players play harder and take more risk. And I think that for blending genres, and like you said, Robert, you were a first time writer. this is an experience for you where you literally the world is literally still your oyster. You haven't been clamshelled into a format yet. No one's looking at you to create the next novel that was just as good, if not better, than the last one you did.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a really good analogy. Totally. And I think I'd hate to be locked down like that. I think if that started to happen, I can't imagine the interest still being there. So
Right.
I just love the fact you can just open up and you can just go wherever it takes you. It's like I'm not really into Hollywood endings on films. I like an ending that is more realistic. And I think it's very brave when these people take a movie to somewhere it shouldn't go, or something that doesn't follow the expected way.
Right, like an independent film. Um,
Absolutely.
so Donna, with with you being the veteran writer on the project, do you ever find yourself, kind of uh, looking at the project and feeling like it needs to conform to something and then drawing yourself back out? Or do you feel like has kind of opened you up to the idea of being able to produce something that things you haven't done before? And also, if you want to take a minute and talk about some of your past projects or your previous styles and things like that, feel free to.
It's exactly what I needed. I hadn't actually written for a year when I started this project with Robert, because I was completely jaded with the whole publishing industry. I was jaded with my writer. I've still got the manuscript now. I first came to a manuscript just over a year ago now, and I just dropped it. I thought I can't do it. I can't write anymore. And it wasn't until because I was already friends with Robert on Facebook, so we used to chat, and I started talking to him about something, and literally the book developed that way, and it's exactly what I needed. I messaged Robert early on myself. Actually, although we're editing the Collered Kitten now, I've already started another book. So it's been a boom, amazing thing for me to happen, and I'm so grateful that I had Robert come on board with me because I wouldn't have tried it ever again. I don't think I've ever tried to write again otherwise. I was just sick of it. There's so much bureaucracy with publishers and things, and so much. I had one publisher say to me he didn't want any more of my certain style of books. He'd only publish me again if I wrote an urban fantasy, and I said, well, I'm not going to do that. You're not going to tell me what to write. So, but I've left that publisher anyway. So,
Well,
yes,
yeah,
exactly what I needed.
but yeah, creativity should never be stifled in that manner.
No, absolutely not. No, but it's exactly what I needed. It's completely made me want to write again. So, whether the book fails or succeeds, I think it will succeed because it's so different. And I've said this to Robbie. He said, "How do you think people are going to find it?" And I said, "I think lovers of these sorts of genres are going to absolutely lap it up. We will get people who will prudes who will say, "Oh, that's despicable. How could you write that?" But then there's no such thing as bad publicity, is there? So
No, you're absolutely right there. Go ahead.
Now, what are kind of both of you? What are kind of your personal kind of writing or literature genres that you tend to read and take influence from?
Go on then, lads.
okay, I used to be in love with the classics. I reread them and read them and read them again. But now I literally like horror. I like reading horror and I like reading erotic horror as well. I think it just makes. I think horror can sometimes be a bit dry, and if you add some spice and erotica, it makes it. I'm not going to use the word moist because everybody hates
Oh no, you already have, and people are already clipping it in the chat.
No, but it's just I think all books actually generally, unless they're like mathematical books, should have some form of sex in them. I think it just makes them more palatable. Unless of course it's how to learn Spanish or something, and then you don't put sex in there. But
No,
I think
Well,
I
I think there's
I
disagree.
mean,
There's an
so,
entire
some phrases on how to pick up chicks who speak Spanish would be helpful.
I was
Yes.
going to say there's an entire generation of fifth graders that agree with everything that you just said. Math book, yes. Sex, please. If you teach me that 2 + 2 = 4 in a very exciting way, I will retain
Yeah.
it. But
Okay, so Robert, what do you like to read?
Well, I'm more of, I suppose, horror, but I remember even going back to the old movies, like the Christopher Lee and things like that.
right,
I quite like
yeah,
that more than the slashers. I'm not so much into the slashers. There's nothing behind it. I like something with a bit of a story to it.
More of
I
like a
was,
psychological sort of
yes,
horror.
something with a twist, and also something that doesn't always end. They have to have this person caught, and this person. It's the way it has to end. So it's a little bit different. Obviously, erotica. I've got no problems reading some of that. That's absolutely fine. Yeah, sort of quite open, but it's got to be something that I find interesting, not just run of the mill.
right.
Yeah. Now, do you guys find writing erotica easier than other types of writing because sex is such a primal, like, human desire?
Well, let me cut in real quick before you
Yeah.
take that question on board. I'm going to disavow Ayrton first off. Secondly, I I'm going to take
What?
his question and kind of
What did I
mold it.
do?
I'm going to mold it into something a little more different. Do you find that blending erotica in with horror and other genres make them easier to write, make the themes actually come alive, like you were talking about, or is there certain times where you feel like it's not necessarily something that may be well received? Do you ever question those decisions?
I think
I
it
love
has
it.
to work in the book. I'm sure Donna, you'd agree. It has to. You can't just slip it in there for no reason. There's got to be a reason for it to
Um,
slip in. Sorry to use
is
that
that is
analogy.
that a
Almost
pun intended? I was
nothing.
going to ask.
But
That's what she
the way
said.
we've written it, the two are very tightly linked,
Yeah.
and the whole thing rolls on it. Without giving it
Tightly,
too
he
much away.
says.
I've already
But
disavowed him, so you're good.
Donna, what do you think?
Yeah, I absolutely do. I found mixing them actually incredibly easy. I'm sure that'd be the same with any sort of book now. Um, and I think because it's going to sound terrible, but maybe pain, pleasure, there's such a
Mm.
fine line between the two. So you, it, the way we wrote it is so that it it can be construed as somebody's fantasy as opposed to something terrible happening. It's just I think erotica
it
and
gives it a
horror,
separate perspective, is what you're saying.
yeah, it does. It makes it more real, if you know what I mean.
Right.
Yeah.
There's a lot of kink in the book, so it makes it more real. Because you couldn't have it just sort of like with people applauding somebody, I don't know, like walking around and saying they'd had sex and that. It wouldn't work. So you have to write the kink stuff in, and kink so easily leads on to horror, doesn't it? I mean, let's face it, it's so easy.
Well, you you mentioned kink, and I think when we were discussing this off air, the term bondage came up, right?
Hmm.
Hmm.
Okay. Well, I'm first off, I'd like to ask one more question before we get into this, if that's okay. And then I've prepared a little tie-in for the comic theme as far as
Tie-in.
the bondage goes. But before we get there, are either one of you familiar with any actual comic books? I know the distribution's a little bit different over in the UK, so you may not be familiar with any titles, but have you guys, even growing up, were you familiar with any comic books?
I was. I
Really?
loved them.
What
We used to have the Beano
what did
and
you?
with the
Go ahead. Sorry.
So we used to have the Beano, and we used to get them every Saturday morning. And some of them were like big tabloid papers, but they were comics
Right.
and things. I used to love comics when I was a kid. We had literally stacks of them all stacked up against the wall because I've got 6 older brothers, so there was always lots of comics in the house.
All right. Well, that's nice. What I was going to say is we like to have we like to have guests on regularly. So if we can, for a later date, maybe discuss looking at a comic book together and breaking it down, analyzing it. What about you, Robert?
Yeah, I remember as a child often having comic books. It's probably more of a boy thing, maybe. But I can remember
Well,
clearly Judge Dredd,
obviously
which
not. Donna had
Stallone
comics.
ruined.
Hey,
No,
hey,
uh,
that is sexist, sir.
yeah, too right.
He's not American. It's okay.
You have no one of our argument.
But yeah, I mean, I used to love Judge Dredd, which
Oh
I
yeah,
remember it was hard to find over here. They had the normal comics, but we also had things called Victor and things war books, like comics. But
right.
the fantasies were harder. But Judge Dredd, I used to love. I used to like the fantasy side of it,
You
and
know,
I used to like. It was quite brutal, and it was very black or white. You know, you broke the law, and you didn't break the law. Okay.
right.
Now,
Judge Dredd is still going on.
Yeah, but Stallone ruined Dredd when he
Oh
made the
yeah,
film. The
the
other
new
guy was good. The
yeah,
guy
the
was
other
from
guy was
Star
good.
Trek.
Yeah,
Yeah.
go ahead, Aiden.
so before we go into the comic tie, I have one more question about the creative process for you guys.
We're gonna get back around to
What's it
questions as
like?
well, but yeah, go ahead.
Oh, what's it like collaborating in a literature piece like this? Like, kind of, what's the process of writing a story with somebody else?
We just bounce off each other, don't we, Robert? Literally,
Yeah,
we chat
absolutely.
away. Then we chat away on Messenger, and then all of a sudden, we got a Google document, and Robert might put at the top of the Google document, page 28. He's added something. The actual process is really easy because if you both know the end game, and if you both, what was amazing was we both exactly on the same page from word go on how this story would go. So to me, it's an easy process. I don't know about you, Robert. Do you find it easy?
Absolutely. And the nice thing was, with the new technology now, we've got this document written through, and that was the very basic part. And then we're literally going in, adding more at different places. And I do feel for Donna sometimes because I wouldn't have Google Docs. Maybe I was at work, and I'll be texting. I've had this idea. This is what happens, and I'll send this massive text to her. Poor Donna. Then went in and had to type it up. But when I've got the idea, I have to do it then. I have to say it then. Bang.
Right.
Well,
Yeah, absolutely. You had one of those today, didn't you?
Oh, yeah, I did. Wow. A bit late to have one, but yeah.
Yeah, he had to get that bang. He had to get that bang in real late.
Goodness.
I'm reminded of the South Park episode with the Hardy Boys and their massive clues. I've got a huge clue right now. I've got great inspiration. Sorry, guys. I apologize.
That's exactly how it is, though, And I'll just be rambling on, especially with the voicemail.
You just get a massive inspiration in the middle of the day.
Don't make light of it, Ayrton. I mean, you know, after the show when we talk for like an hour and a half about what future shows are going to be like, and I just ramble on.
True. Now I have the Led Zeppelin song stuck in my head. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
So while Donna and I were talking, planning the show, she gave me a brief synopsis of what the project was about, and like I said, the term bondage came up, and the first thing that I thought of being a comic book fan is let's pull that up here, is William Marston, the creator of Wonder Woman. He was supposedly a member of a bondage sex cult, and actually drew out a lot of his fantasies in the pages of Wonder Woman as he was creating it back in the 60s. So I kind of wanted to bring this up and go through it with you guys and see what you guys thought about how this particular article depicts the use of
Wow,
bondage
look
in
at
the
that. I
early
never
comic
saw
book.
that.
What was that?
I've never seen those pictures before. It's amazing. Is that actually Wonder Woman in chains like that? I can't believe that.
Yeah, yeah. That used to be
Why
her
we all wanted to be
weakness.
Wonder Woman?
That
Is it
was
why we all wanted Wonder Woman when we were little?
well, that was actually the only weakness that Wonder Woman had was being tied up and what's the word I'm looking for? Incapacitated.
Which is a
Yeah.
kink straight in itself. I mean, who came up with that as her weakness?
William Marston, her creator.
Amazing.
Yeah, excellent stuff. Excellent.
Yeah, but the article I'm just going to kind of briefly read through it here, and we'll stop and comment on it. The origin of Wonder Woman is not your typical tale that needs to be told. In today's society, women's rights, values, and strength are rightly accepted to be equal by men. In the 40s, the idea of a strong
Should they though?
Ayrton, have I fired you yet today?
Off air.
Okay. In the 1940s, the idea of a strong, confident, sexual woman was not the image readily promoted in society. William Moulton Marston's vision of a new Amazonian comic book character changed all of that with the creation of Wonder Woman. The multitude of influence that formed Wonder Woman starts with her creator, William Moulton Marston. He was an accomplished man in his own right. He was well educated, progressive in his views of the world, and a psychologist, professor, scientist, author, and inventor. You see how motivated people were back then?
Wow.
The invention of the polygraph lie detector test was attributed to Marston, which is said to have also influenced Wonder Woman's lasso of truth.
Mm.
Oh my goodness.
So this is the kink of the guy that invented the lie detector test.
That makes me uncomfortable.
Yeah.
But I do want to say that back in the 40s, this was a risque comic panel.
Oh yeah.
This was edging the line right here. You know, some newsstands would not sell Wonder Woman out in the open because of how sexual it was.
Really?
God.
Oh yeah, you don't understand. America was a prude until the 60s. But
Woodstock, baby.
Yeah, Woodstock. Amazing. I would love to go to Woodstock.
everybody can say it's Woodstock. I know it was the LSD.
Well, technically the LSD started in the late 40s, early 50s as
Yes,
CIA
but it was
experiments.
shh. Marston's
Just
private life.
saying.
Marston's private life would not even be considered conventional. Even today, he was an advocate for free love and had an extended relationship with two women, Elizabeth Holloway and Olive Byrne. Both Elizabeth and Olive
Well,
each had
who
two.
wants to pay? Who wants to pay for?
Both Elizabeth and Olive each had two children to Marston, and they all lived happily together as a family. After Marston's death from cancer in 1947, Elizabeth and Olive remained together for another 30 years, with Elizabeth being the last to die at age 100.
Oh, that's really cool.
So they had a polyamorous, polyamorous kink relationship. The creator of Wonder Woman. This is the character that women are holding up as their virtue of feminism, and I guarantee you that feminists would look at this relationship and go, "Nope."
Yeah.
Oh hell nah.
Olive Burns' mother. Where the hell am I going? Elizabeth. That's where I was. That's their joined name as a couple.
That British accent's wearing off on the church.
That or the Scotch, one or the other. Olive Burns' mother, her famous feminist aunt, Margaret Sanger, heavily instilled their views on women's rights to Olive. Marston likewise used Margaret Sanger, the early feminist, as an inspiration for conceiving who Wonder Woman was to be as a character. He wanted a strong, intelligent symbol that projected strong feminist ideals. Not even girls want to be girls so long as our feminine archetype lacks force, strength, and power. Not wanting to be girls, they don't want to be tender, submissive, peace-loving, or as good women are. Women's strong qualities have become despised because of their weakness. The obvious remedy is to create A feminine character with all the strength of Superman plus the allure of a good and beautiful woman. Note that she
This is
doesn't have,
amazing.
yeah, note that she doesn't have pink hair or a sign that's claiming her hatred of Donald Trump.
Yeah.
She
I
can be
mean,
strong without those things.
I
Here,
mean, he should have given her the power to make like super sandwiches, but
shh.
Mm.
Super sandwich. His template of the ideal woman came from the extended relationship with Elizabeth and Olive, their forward thinking attitudes, looks, and affiliations with feminist groups. Their looks. He's already objectifying the feminist.
Yeah.
And affiliations to feminist groups such as the suffrage movement inspired Marston to form his new superhero into a collective manifestation of the strongest women he knew.
Can
And
you believe this is
apparently,
the home Wonder Woman?
if you put Olive and Elizabeth together, you get Linda Carter, and that's a wonderful thing.
no, I
Yeah.
don't want to hear any like unconcerning sounds coming from you, Robert. All right.
He can mute his mic.
I'll try not to.
He can mute his microphone. He's fine.
Wow.
It has
It's
hard.
amazing. I can't believe that's the guy behind Wonder Woman.
That what? The guy that created Wonder Woman?
Yeah, I can't believe it's the person who created Wonder Woman. It's amazing.
Oh yeah. No. The history of comic books is, if you go back to the beginning when the superhero craze took over in the late 30s with Superman and Batman and Wonder Woman, um, the things you realize that went into these characters, because the superhero was pretty much unheard of until then. Like, it had been conceptualized and toyed with, but it had never been fully implemented. Like, you got strong men and circus comics. That was your superhero.
Yeah.
With the creation of Superman, entered an entire genre of what I like to call the age of American mythology, because these characters perform the same tasks that the Greek and Roman gods did for those cultures. They implement everything that we want to be: strong, smart, capable, wealthy, handsome, well liked, and they also exert all the virtues that society says we should, kindness, goodness, all of that stuff. So I literally look at superheroes as the pantheon to American society. But that's just
Wow.
me.
Yeah, I see that. That's cool. No, I can see that. I can see that.
I would broaden it and say Western society, like as a whole, but
Well,
Yeah.
I would agree to a certain extent, but the thing is that comic books for a long time were not heavily accepted in European countries, especially during the war. Like during the
fair.
40s, when the America was using comic books as propaganda. If you had American
Yeah,
comic books in
absolutely.
Nazi Germany, you were done for. Like, that was it,
Do
because Captain
you know
America
what?
beat the
You
shit
can
out of
ask.
Hitler.
You can ask Robert about this because he was around then in the 40s, weren't you?
Ooh. Donna McCarthy, you're going to be over my knee, young lady. You keep on.
don't tempt her with a good time.
Yeah.
I'm just over here drinking scotch. It's hard to imagine today, but early comics were considered to be a corrupting influence on children's minds. It's not hard to imagine today. I've read the filth they put out these days. I wouldn't want my kids reading some of it.
Right?
I'd rather my kids
Freaking
read old
Squirrel
comics.
Girl.
Yeah. With their violent and suggestive content. Imagine bringing kids back to our time on one of Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventures. Oh, there's a reference. And I'm not sure what the butterfly effect would be of a 1940s kid playing Grand Theft Auto, but I'm guessing it would not be good.
Yeah.
In 1954, the concern was so great that the Senate inquiry was held. One of the main antagonists, I've actually talked about this on the Dead Man's Tone podcast. They were our guest last night talking about Lock and Key, but we talked about the Comic Code Authority and Frederick Wortham.
No way. They actually had. I can't believe that.
Yeah, I'll get through this and we'll talk about it after I get through this paragraph. In 1954, the concern was so great that a Senate inquiry was held. One of the main antagonists supporting the condemnation of comic books was Frederick Wertham, and his book titled The Seduction of the Innocent. To put it simply, Frederick Wertham was the 1940s equivalent of Donald Trump. Oh, shots fired! His book raised concern. I like this article all the way up to that. Why did you have to screw it up for me? His book raised concerns over the violent nudity and sexual themes portrayed in comics. He especially had trouble understanding the bondage subtext of Wonder Woman and how the character could be considered on equal footing as men. As to the advanced femininity, what are the activities in comic books which women indulge on equal footing with men? They don't work, they're not homemakers, they don't bring up a family. Mother love is entirely absent. Even when Wonder Woman adopts a girl, there are lesbian overtones. Was quoted from Wortham. But yeah, what were you saying, Robert?
I just cannot believe that your government had some committee put together to discuss comic books. That is just so. It's just amazing.
Just to kind of give
Dude, we have committees for everything.
Well, just to kind of give a brief history lesson on that. It was very much like it was today. It was outrage culture. Frederick Wertham was a psychiatrist, and he was a child psychologist, rather. And he determined that the overabundance of horror themed and crime themed comic books were eventually going to lead our youth into degeneracy. That was his deduction. He was wrong,
Yep.
but that was his deduction, and he published a book titled Seduction of the Innocent. And basically, instead of letting the government come in and censor comic books, they created something called the Comic Code Authority. Now, the Comic Code stepped in, and they were self censorship in the comic industry, much like American movies and video games have, where the industry establishes a rating to the comic book, but they also have certain guidelines that you can't do to be involved in that rating system. Like in the Comic Code Authority, you couldn't show blood, you couldn't show decapitations, you couldn't show crime in a favorable light. The criminal couldn't get away with it.
Can't believe this.
Right. And this is where we were in the 40s until the late 80s, or I believe it was the late 70s, early 80s, something like that, when Stan Lee put out a book.
Man, you're making him clutch his pearls over there.
I am. But let me look up the exact date so I don't sound like an idiot. But Stan Lee Comic Code Authority. I'm sure this is enticing here.
Right.
But
yes,
this is the most entertaining thing we've ever done. Let me look this up.
the political parallel. So in your guys' government, all of your elected officials just yell at each other in wigs and robes. Ours make committees on random shit. So, you know, a little bit of a difference there.
Okay, it was 1971, so it was the early 70s. Spider-Man number 96 came out, and Spider-Man had an interaction with a character who was high on drugs, which went against the Comic Code Authority. So instead of not publishing the book because it couldn't get the Comic Code Authority seal, Stan Lee just published the book without the seal. And that pretty much started the death of the Comic Code. But it took
go Stan Lee.
Yeah, it took almost 30 years. Well, it took a little under 20 years for the Comic Code Authority to start losing its grip on comic books, and for us to get stuff like Lock and Key and Criminal on the shelves again.
Wow.
So
we're quite lucky over here. I think we just didn't have that sort of same control. It was just you can't get hold of them because they weren't shipping them over.
Right, but see, now you have Article 11 and 13, so you can't even take pictures with your digital camera anymore. Don't talk to me over here in Freedom Land about freedom. I'm just messing with you.
Land of the free.
Democracy.
Trust me, I know it's all a lark. None of us are free. But anyway, you guys ready to get back into this, or you want to comment some more on the Wonder Woman bondage theme, or you want to keep going?
I kind of want to hear their take on it.
All
On
right.
the Wonder Woman thing.
All right. Following the 1954 hearings, a Comic Code Authority was formed and remained in use by DC Comics until 2011. Marvel dropped it much earlier. But the original version of the code did not permit horror, excessive bloodshed, gory or gruesome crimes, depravity, lust, sadism, and masochism. In direct opposition to Wonder Woman, the code specified that illicit sex relations are neither to be hinted at nor portrayed. Violent love scenes as well as sexual abnormalities are unacceptable. In other
Sexual
words,
abnormalities.
in other words, the code removed all the good stuff that made DC Comics interesting.
Absolutely.
It doesn't
Oh
mention
my
that it
God.
completely put EC Comics, Eerie Tales or Eerie Collaboration something. But EC Comics was the main publisher. They had like 90 something horror titles. It put them completely out of business.
Well, that's sad.
Well, not really, because it gave
Do
us
it
Mad
for the
Magazine.
children.
Because magazines weren't held to the comic code, so you could print comic books in magazine format instead.
Ah.
That was the workaround. But
Clever.
but kids
Yeah.
had to be old enough to buy magazines. That was the thing, because you'd have pornography in some of them. But
Oh God, yeah, absolutely.
Frederick Wortham was later found to have exaggerated his concern and was proven to be nothing more than a comb over with a big mouth. And here
Let's not
we
hold
have
back here.
So he was a cock.
Yes. Here we have probably my favorite image in the entire article. This is an audience of babies cheering on two little girls, one wearing a crown, spanking a tied-up Wonder Woman, saying, "It's pretty tough being a grown-down lady slave." This was in a comic book. This was on a shelf somewhere.
Oh my God.
I bet you couldn't release that now, actually.
Absolutely
I
not.
couldn't know.
But
Now, is this more or less crazy than some of the stuff you two write?
This is more crazy. This is weird.
Yeah,
Well,
this is an area
in
where
this-
I would really go.
in this instance, the grown down people, they're the older ones of their race. They reverse age. They start as older people,
Yeah.
and the older ones are the children essentially. So,
Oh my goodness.
but
It's
that's
just the image.
yeah, but that's it's basically Benjamin Button, but in comics.
Yeah. Can you imagine actually having that idea though and wanting to write that? Like all of a sudden this idea comes to you about the grown down people and beating the woman on the stage.
I just want to be
Comics are weird.
I just really want to be a fly on the wall in that editorial office.
Oh my God.
You mean
Yeah,
a
Donna, let's-
fly in
let's
the
be careful
cocaine
there.
of that editorial office?
Yeah.
Yeah, let's be careful there, though. There's nothing wrong with a spanking on the stage. It's just the manner of this one.
Spoken like someone who's been to the bondage club this month.
So,
Well, Amsterdam's not far
what-
away from us.
what is your day job?
I don't know if you know the word over there. It's gigolo. Do you know that word?
Yes.
Yes, our president's a very famous one.
My
all right.
my sister lived in Ireland for a year. I picked up
All right.
Some interesting language from there.
That's putting it mildly.
Yeah.
The combination of Marston's personality, lifestyle, and liberated partners culminated into the strong bondage theme in his Wonder Woman comics. The use of chains is consistently used in the fight for women's rights as a symbol of restrictive shackles that presented equal rights and freedom. In particular, Margaret Sanger regularly depicted imagery of women being held or burdened by chains in her magazine Birth Control Review. Marston employed these themes to express the views society needed to change their perception of power and love.
Now, can we just point out that Margaret Sanger did not like black people?
I mean, we can point out anything we want to. It's my show.
All right. Well, I just want to point that out. Anyways, continue.
The only hope for peace. This is from the excerpt from Birth Control Review, I assume. The only hope for peace is to teach people who are full of pep and unbound force to enjoy being bound. Only when the control of self by others is more pleasant than the unbound assertion of self in human relationships can we hope for a stable, peaceful human society. Giving to others, being controlled by them, submitting to other people cannot possibly be enjoyable without a strong erotic element.
Now,
Sounds good.
question. So, is the fact that you're British and under the command of the throne, is that what drew you to the bondage genre?
Oh, shots fired again.
Oh.
I'll let Donna
go
answer
through
that
some.
because I'm a Republican. I want to bring back the guillotine.
Good man.
I'm not a royalist. I used to be a royalist. I'm not one anymore. I've seen too much poverty, so I was brought up a royalist, but I've got my own views now. So no, I've seen too much poverty to believe in that sort of ridiculous affair, living in gold palaces and things. Just annoys me now. Robert would behead them. I would just send them somewhere like and it was a really crap place in the world. Yeah.
I mean, you guys already sent all of my people there, so.
Yeah, I think they should be put in their own dungeons for a while. But anyway, yeah. No,
I mean,
I used
we
to
won't
be a
tell
royalist. I'm not anymore.
We won't tell you. She's actually American, folks. Just chained up to a radiator somewhere in South Michigan.
Oh my
Hey,
goodness.
don't
true.
give away our secret.
It's true.
All right.
I call her Bertie Bassett. You know, like Bertie Bassett because like the licorice all sort man. She always got these little hats on and coats and things. And did you see all the Facebook crap about because she shed one tear at Memorial Day? Remember Sunday she shed one tear and it was like the whole world was fainting because the Queen cried one tear.
That's probably the only tear she had.
Yeah, I was about to say.
It was probably hay fever.
I think
I was going to say because I'll go throw some tea in a harbor right now.
Yeah, just do it.
That's what I do every Sunday.
Toss that cup of tea in the harbour.
All right.
Well, that analogy is understandable. You could take that analogy to work and everything else, couldn't you? That everyone's bound because they've got to do this to make sure they have their house, and then when someone finds a way to be free of it, you're thrown off those chains, and it must be there must be a feeling of such strength and not being controlled there. So I can understand part of that.
Right.
I don't know what sorry, just to interject.
Yeah, go ahead.
You hear church. I don't know what the business culture is like over in the UK, but over here we have a strong like kind of drive towards entrepreneurship, and to me the ultimate freedoms of like breaking those chains because you're working for yourself, not for somebody else. Is that something that they have over there?
Yeah, I think they do in most places. It's we have a strong business sense. You know, used to be before Brexit the centre of the financial world sort of thing. You know, grey suits, black suits. You all go in a uniform, and you have to work there, give all your life to your work. You know, so when someone actually
Yeah.
manages to break it, it's a big thing, and people are really usually pleased for them that they've got out of the rut.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Just going back to the Queen thing, I think Robert has a fantasy of the Queen he wants to share. The one with the bananas and the handcuffs and the Queen.
I'd like to keep my YouTube channel. Can we share that off air? Maybe. I'm just curious. I mean, you're my guest. You're obviously free to talk about whatever you want to, but I'm just curious if we could talk about that one maybe off air.
You don't want that knock on the door, do you? With the guys with the hood and the taking you out to the little black van.
That happens in your country, not
No,
ours.
I've heard the Queen has some friends over here, so. All right, let's wrap this article up so we can get back to the collared kitten. Why would parents have a problem with their kids reading that? Of course, the themes would not have been obvious to children. To adults, on the other hand, seeing Wonder Woman frequently chained, gagged, tortured, and occasionally lassoed was raising more than eyebrows. Marston's early depictions of Wonder Woman consistently showed the physical submission and bondage to arouse eroticism in his readers. There we got a couple of examples there: her being tied up by a rope, her own lasso, by chains.
I remember that on TV. I'd been last stage.
Yeah, that was that stayed true to the Linda Carter.
It was always the way, wasn't it?
Yep.
It was.
That's what she remembers.
Yeah. Well, then the show did its job.
Yeah.
Marston knew what he was doing and never crossed the line from sex love training to real sadism that was morbid or harmful. His training in psychology afforded him the confidence to experiment with how both sexes related to one another. The choice of submissive theme clearly empowered Wonder Woman to choose her own circumstances, and go by doing so proves that only contest with sex with our own assertive egos. And then it goes into to Wonder Woman today, which, can I just say, Gal Gadot, beautiful choice for Wonder Woman. Like, that the best DC movie they put out today.
Very easy on the eyes.
Very much so.
Even though she's a Jew.
Shh.
But does she get bound as much? Does she get tied up and gagged as much as the old Wonder Woman? I haven't seen the new
Unfortunately, film. No.
Not in the movie,
no,
but it depends on her boyfriend, I guess, would be the question there. I'm sure she kept the costume.
Hat in the ring there, Robert.
Oh, wow. I could teach her a thing or two. I teach her respect.
I don't know, man. I've seen the movie. She might teach you a thing or two.
Oh, don't.
Trying to make a nice egg sandwich.
The critical review.
I'm quite good at saying this.
The critical view of the public that content the publications such as Batman and Superman were too masculine was the catalyst for Marston to express his views and offer Wonder Woman solution. Little did by Matt Gaines know. I think there are some typos in this article. They had only shifted to the criticism and opened the door to a new pivotal superhero in Wonder Woman. Over the time, the bondage themes were removed and the tone of Wonder Woman softened in line with the Comic Code Authority. Here's a little...
Those cucks.
Yeah, here's a little excerpt. Frankly, Wonder Woman is a psychological propaganda for the new type of woman who, I believe, should rule the world. Regardless of the changes, Wonder Woman's indestructible bracelets, tiara, blue underpants, red knee-high boots showed her to represent the ideal that has seen her become the longest-running female character of all time. With ever-expanding DC Comics universe, Wonder Woman has shown to be one of the pillars of the Justice League, and for good reason. She's also a member of the Trinity, which you don't mention in this article at all.
No.
The goal of Marston is to
Go ahead, finish.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'm going to. The goal of Marston is to grow the power of women, realize now more than ever people do not give a second thought that Wonder Woman is of equal measure to her male colleagues, and in respects proven to be far superior. Source: The Secret History of Wonder Woman. So, let's
Oh,
Now, I agree that if women entirely ruled the world, we would have no wars. But every 28 days, we would have very intense negotiations.
you're awful. So that's how bondage and comics have been together basically since the birth of the superhero. Now, we talked about it a little bit before the show, but there's an entire imprint called Zenoscope that prints what I like to call cheesecake comics, and I'll bring one of those up near the end of the segment here. But I want to talk some more about the Collared Kittens project. So you gave us the elevator pitch earlier on what that
Or
was.
the lift pitch, as they would say.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
If we're going to say it correctly, yeah.
I'm just trying to translate. That's all. I've watched a lot of old British television. All right.
Yeah, well, you keep talking, you're going to end up in Britain. Airmail. But I'd like to invite you two guys to go a little further in depth with anything you want to tell us about the story or tease us with or entice the audience with.
Tease us, he says.
I do.
We've got to be very careful because we don't want to spoil the story.
Right,
And
right,
I have
of
to
course.
keep Donna in. I have to keep Donna in bounds on this because she gets a bit excited and gives more away sometimes. Don't you, young lady? But as I said, it is about this Crystal who has come from nothing, is desperate for something, and comes across the Collered Kitten and can see a way of improving her life in all different ways. And then it's just the horror of her road as it goes along, the horror and erotic that mix and merge along this road until really a brutal and climatic ending. And it is quite a yeah. That's about all I can say, isn't it?
yeah, we're not saying whose brutal ending it is though, because you may be thinking it's Chris at the moment, but you'd probably be wrong. So anyway, it's
Who
somebody.
knows?
Well, yeah,
If I said so much again,
definitely don't give away more than you're comfortable doing. So I'm quite excited. Like I said, doing the research on Donna and her previous works. I've already tried to make arrangements to read some of her previous works if at all possible. Um,
I'm overhauling those actually. I'm going to overhaul all of those books now. I've got them away from my publisher. I'm going to overhaul them. I just want to make them a bit sexier. So
well, like I said, all good things come to those who wait. But
yeah.
I like I said, with titles like the Hangman's Hitch, you really you can't help but be intrigued. And
Thank
you guys come on good recommendations. We're in pretty good standing with the Dead Man's Stone podcast crew, and
Well.
I am in pretty good standings with them. Ayrton's not in good standings with anybody except the ladies in the chat.
this is true.
They call him the one with the sexy voice, and me, I'm just a host
It's-
who found him. I'm just the one that sets up the show every week, make sure we have Comixology and different copies of stuff. I set up the OBS. I run the show. I tell him his audio is crap.
I read the books.
You can't read.
oh my god.
Okay, I look at the pictures, all right, and I deduce from there a little Holmesian deduction from the pictures, if you will.
So how far out is this project for you guys? How much longer are people going to have to wait to get their hands on the Collared Kitten?
We're not that far away. The aim is we want to have the final proof ready for the end of this month.
Oh.
Donna hates me, as I said earlier, because I come out with this idea today that had to go in because it really is important to the story. And she's like, do you know what date it is? Do you know? But we want it to be right, and there's no point releasing it if there's a chunk missing. It just has to flow right. So
Right,
No,
absolutely.
it definitely belongs there. It's
But we're
really
not-
good.
absolutely. But we're not far away now. So
Once it goes into
we've got our final read together, and we're going to sit together, go through it, and then we'll print the final version.
once it goes to print, we're definitely going to have you guys back on to promote it once again, so we can shill it on the show.
Fabulous.
Now, which one of you is going to record the audiobook?
Roberts, because I've got the worst voice in the world.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that. That'll be really cool.
We're going to have him record the audiobook, but I'm going to be in the studio while he's recording, just flashing different pictures of Linda Carter in her Wonder Woman outfit to try and trip him up during the recording, but he's going to have to do it in one take on one track.
I just think there's going to be loads of gaps and loads of strange noises going on during that recording.
That's right.
You mean something like...
That's the one.
What we're going to do is we're going to release that as the super secret special cut. And then we're going to have an editor come in and actually clean it up for the regular version. But if you want to hear all the grunts and all the disgusting noises and whatnot, you're going to have to pay the extra 20 what is it, quid over there? 20 quid?
It's 20 quid, yeah.
Yeah, you have to pay the
Cool.
extra. But no, I definitely appreciate you guys sharing that with us. Since Becky decided to send us the cover for Alma Mater, I'd love to if Donna would give us a brief intro to that, so that this wouldn't be a wasted image.
That's really cool. Yeah, it's a really saucy horror set in an 18th century whorehouse in London. So
I'm sold.
So my childhood.
I absolutely adore the book. Actually, I love it. So the cover is perfect as well. It's absolutely perfect.
I do like the cover. I mean, you don't get corsets enough in society today. You have to go to a Renaissance fair over here to get corsets anymore. Like just
Yeah, of course
It's
cool.
true. I am definitely a fan of the corset. I'll have to say.
But
Corsets are amazing.
But no.
Now, Robert, I assume you have a corset, correct?
Well,
God.
We call them something else here.
we call it our weekend wear. So, but let's not go into that one.
Because we only need them for the gut section. We don't need them for the butt.
Yeah. Especially if you drink a lot of beer like I do.
Now.
Yeah, you need to move on to shorts. Less beer gut.
Now I do have some news articles that I've got for this week in comics. If you guys want to stick around and comment on those with us.
Cool.
I don't know if you're familiar, but Becky, Deadman, and S.K. Barrett have recently been involved in doing some shows with us in regards to Lock and Key. We went through 6 volumes of it's a graphic novel written by Joe Hill, who is Stephen King's son.
An amazing story.
But it's one of the few horror comics that I literally put on the top 10 list of my graphic novels you should read. So this Lock and Key apparently has a release for Netflix coming soon. I'm not going to read the whole thing, because if you want to know about Lock and Key, you should check out the 4 episodes we've done on it so far on the Gospel of Comics channel here. Like and subscribe. Shameless plug. Lock and Key, everything we know about Netflix next big comic book series.
Shouldn't you be shamed by the plug a little bit?
No, I'm shamed by you.
Fair enough.
But Netflix is about to add yet another original comic-based series, critically acclaimed, or yet another original series based on a critically acclaimed comic book, following the footsteps of Umbrella Academy and Mark Millar's Millar World imprint. Joe Hill and Gabriel Rodriguez, Lock and Key is coming to Netflix in the near future. Finally, an adaptation that has been trapped in development hell for the past decade will see the light of day. Lock and Key finished in 2012, 2013. So 6 volumes, roughly 1 volume every year. It probably started in, I don't know, 2007.
It was. I thought it was 2008.
Probably. Well, they probably started writing in 2007 and published the first volume in 2008. So yeah, we've known about this story since then, and like I said, they probably wanted to make a show out of it immediately because we got iZombie before we got Lock and Key. I want people to think about that. Just as a quick description for our guest here, Lock and Key is the story of a key house in a town called Lovecraft, Massachusetts. So you can already tell there's going to be Lovecraftian influence in the story.
Yeah.
The story of the house is there are doors in the house that open with normal keys, and you can just walk through them like a normal human being. But if you open them with their Whisper Iron key, which is made from demon iron, with demons that come into our world and become iron, something crazy happens. Like there's a door that you can open with this key, and you walk through it, and you become an animal.
Wow.
There's a door you can walk through that'll change your gender. There's a door you can walk through that will kill you and let your spirit roam the property.
Did you hear Robert's excitement when you said you could change your gender through a door?
Oh, God, I'd never go out.
I'd never go back through the door. That's for damn sure. But there are all kind of doors, and there are locks that activate traps. There are locks that let you control the shadows around you. I mean, they're all fantastical and whatnot. I suggest everybody read this comic book. If they're all available on Comixology Unlimited that you can get for a month free, all except Volume 6. But if you're interested in horror and you like Stephen King's early writing, you'll like Lock and Key because it's definitely an homage.
Yeah, I like.
Go ahead.
Oh no, I understand. I prefer Stephen King's early too. But I'd actually be really interested in reading this, to be honest.
Right.
You definitely should. It's amazing.
We'll talk after the show goes off. We've got 52 more minutes. I think we'll fly past this. We're already an hour in.
Yes.
But I think it's one I'm going to look at because I'm a bit similar as well. There's certain King I find it's the wrong word, but very vanilla. But things like Misery and The Dark Tower, I loved.
Oh, Misery.
The Talisman was my favorite 2-book series that he ever did. The Parallel World series where you had Arcadia and the regular world. Oh, if him and whoever his co-author on that could have gotten along for more than 2 books, it would have been better than The Dark Tower, I think. But,
and they ruined that with a film. I don't know if you've even seen that, but the film they tried to make of The Dark Tower was disgusting.
There's also a comic series
of The Dark Tower. Wow.
Yeah,
definitely.
There's a comic series for everything.
Not necessarily, but you're talking to somebody who fancies themselves an amateur comic historian. If you talk about it, I can find a comic book reference for it.
It's almost like Rule 34. If it exists, there's a comic for it.
I mean, did either one of you anticipate we'd be talking about Wonder Woman's bondage history when you came on tonight?
I was totally expecting it, to be honest.
Okay. Well, I mean, the woman's always right. Having 9 sisters and being married, I know that
waiting
the
for-
woman's always right.
She was waiting for the bondage.
Yes.
All right. Anyway, Lock and Key is that, and we'll talk a little more about it after the show. But our audience is a little more familiar with it. We actually did our final show on it last night with the Dead Man's Tome, finishing up Volume 6. That means there are 36 individual 22-page issues of this comic book. So, anyway, come on. Oh, don't start that. All right, we're gonna skip the story of Lock and Key. The release date. Netflix has yet to reveal an official release date for Lock and Key. However, this is hardly surprising. They often don't reveal release dates until weeks ahead of time. Cast and crew. Lock and Key is being developed by Carlton Coos. I don't care. Stephen King's It director, Andy Muschietti, is also executive producing. He actually directed the pilot episode when it was in development at Hulu, but the project was scrapped and shifted to Netflix. And they talk about some stuff I don't care about. Lock and Key development. Unusually troubled journey from page to screen. In fact, the time Netflix series premieres, there will be 3 entirely separate pilot episodes for the Lock and Key experience. So this show has had 3 separate pilots made. There's a pilot that was screened at Comic-Con in 2011. It was shifted into adapting the series as a movie trilogy, produced by Bobby and Ted Adams of Universal Pictures. The trilogy was officially announced at Comic-Con 2014, a mere 3 years later. It was quietly canceled the following year. Joe Hill wrote a new pilot script along with IDW Publishing and began seeking a new home for the adaptation, which I'm assuming was Netflix. So, oh no, that was the Hulu, and then Netflix picked it up after Hulu dropped it. So, that's interesting. Having just finished covering Lock and Key, it's exciting to find out that they're actually going forward with the TV series. More and more comic book titles, I think, are being harvested for actual TV shows and movies these days, and I honestly think that's a bit to the detriment of a detriment to the entertainment industry. I feel like that it's almost like if you're not biting off of a cartoon series, then you're not really taken seriously anymore. It's almost like not being a rom-com back in the early 2000s. And it's weird because I don't know about you guys, our guest, I don't know how it was growing up for you, but when I was a younger kid, the fact that I liked comic books and I liked, superheroes, that was a detriment to my social score. Like, I was definitely not going to be prom king reading Superman comics, you know what I mean?
That's very true.
So, that's kind of exciting. I'll be interested to see what kind of effects they employ to show the doors, because the keys were a
that'll
really
be
big.
Interesting.
The keys were a really big part of that show. Like there's going to be a lot of practical effects needed because TV shows don't have the budget to do a lot of CGI effects.
Right.
Now, this is something that you guys might not be familiar with, but growing up in the '90s, did you know that there was an X-Men animated series that was extremely popular over here?
We did get clips of it in the UK, but it wasn't something that was big. I don't remember it as being big. Remember, we had limited channels as well.
Right. Over here, it was pretty much the creme de la creme of Saturday morning cartoons. It was what you wanted your Saturday morning cartoon to be. It had an intro that had nice loud, heavy metal music. It was very flashy. The characters had bright colors. They were true to their comic book counterparts. Um, it was right on the edge of being suitable for children,
Yeah, that's cool.
but it ended after 5 years and what, 4 seasons, 5 seasons, 76 episodes.
Something like that.
But the creators of the series are talking to Disney about reviving the iconic cartoon. So that's a thing.
Which I'm excited because it says in the article that they want to pick up where they left off and keep the original kind of art style to it, which would be
Right.
so cool.
Right. It says that the one thing we'd like to do more than anything is continue where we left off. Now, I want to posit this to you guys. Back in 2015, 2016, we actually had the revival of this in comic book format called X-Men 92. Are you familiar with that, Aaron?
We haven't. No, I haven't
I'm
seen that
not.
at all.
Okay. Um, well, I think this is something we're gonna have to put on the list and cover on the show because I have them all already and they're fantastic, and I think they're available on Comixology. So, but they're all drawn in the same style, the same kind of not cheesiness, but just E for everyone, all ages overtones are in the comics just as well as they were in the show.
Yeah.
Right.
So I think it's something we're gonna have to cover if this ever starts picking up a little more traction. But like you said, they want to pick up where they left off. They want to keep the aesthetic of the show. It ran for 5 seasons, 76 episodes from 1992 to 1997. A critically, commercially successful show. It's one of the first major cartoons to feature mature, serialized storytelling. While many of the episodes were original stories, the series did adapt some iconic comic book story arcs as well as the Dark Phoenix saga, which we'll be talking about later on. With the with with the Disney Plus streaming service launching later this year, likely to serve as the perfect host for a constitution of X-Men the Animated Series. It'll already There's always Disney XD, which is already home to several Marvel series such as Guardians and Spider-Man. So, short article there, but kind of exciting news for anybody that grew up in the 90s and enjoyed that show because it was definitely part of my childhood and it was definitely something that I would love to see come back. Now,
Oh yeah.
now that leads me to some questions for you guys. Um, over there in the UK media, are superheroes anywhere near as big as they are over here right now?
I think over here it's really big, especially with with the release of all these films and the way they've lined them all up. I think there's been a massive growth in it. Same as these Comic Cons, are really big. They're obviously not as big as the ones over in the US, but there's a great following of it over here.
But it does pick up a lot more traction than it did before these films came out, and they are pushed as heavily over there as they are over here.
Big time. It's the films that have brought them really back to life.
Right. Well,
Which is a bit of a shame, actually, because the life of it was the comic. But
well, that's what Disney does. It harvests whatever it owns for intellectual property. Is Donna still with us?
she's just because of her meds. She's had to take her meds for her flu.
Okay. I was just making sure we didn't run her off or anything. We haven't done that yet, but it's the first time for everything.
If she's friends with Becky, there's nothing we could say that could scare her off.
Don't fucking challenge me, Aaron. Just shout out real quick in the chat. Killing Joke, how's it going, man? Thank you for stopping by. I gotta throw him a wrench. Becky
You really
in the
should.
chat telling me to drink more. Thank you for that. Cartoon in the cat and Patty in the chat. Thank you all for showing up and giving us the view. We really appreciate it. Looks like what about card games? How do you feel about card games, Robert?
Are we talking poker or are we talking the?
I
Are we
mean,
going on the Pokemon, etc.?
Magic the Gathering's a card game, and that's marketed towards adults.
Yeah, it is. We have, I think, followings, but I think it's very geekified over here. I mean, some others from
Well,
the
I'm
UK
sure
might contact and say that's wrong.
I'm sure the
But yeah, I don't
tariffs.
think it's as big as it could
I'm,
be.
I'm sure the tariffs put kind of a massive paywall on the hobby. Just
Yeah,
just getting
yeah.
the actual
I mean,
cards there from places like Belgium and shit like that.
yeah, absolutely. When we've had these cards before, it's always a lot to get involved, and they're not cheap to get involved in. So
Right.
it really seems to be more something for the adults or the older kids.
Yeah, or the wealthier class to get their kids into.
Absolutely.
Um,
Yeah,
Yeah, those posh kids.
uh,
that's it. Yeah.
are you gonna stop throwing what little bit of British slang you actually know into this to seem impressive, or am I gonna have to fire you again?
Not at all. I'm gonna keep
Okay.
doing it until the end of this show.
Okay, sounds good. As long as our guests are cool with it, I'll leave it to them. I'm just calling you out the first time to let everybody know that it's okay to do. Umbrella Academy
Hey.
is another title that we've covered on this show with another guest. Actually, the artist that did the background image. Let me actually showcase that again real quick. Not that everybody doesn't see it enough, but the background image of our main chat, the open comic book that says Gospel of Comics. The artist for that, Atomic Denny on Twitter @Atomic Denny, he he actually suggested we cover the Umbrella Academy, which is another show on Netflix. But in doing that, he introduced me to something that I kind of want to read a lot more of. So I hate him a little bit for it. But they're apparently releasing a card game. So I'm, like I said, as usual, I'm going to react to this live with you guys. Studio 71, a Red Arrow Studios company, announced its partnership with Dark Horse Comics to develop and release a new card game based on the popular Umbrella Academy comic book series. Now, Umbrella Academy was created by a musician. No, was it? Yeah, it was. What was his name?
Well, he's kind of a musician.
He's a front man.
Yeah,
Gerard
Gerald
Way.
Way from
Not Gerald, Gerard.
Gerard. Whatever.
My Chemical Romance, right?
Yeah.
Well, you got to say, he wrote the comic book, so I mean, he at least has some talent. Maybe not vocally, but
Yeah. Whatever.
musicians, what's the word I'm looking for? They're spite,
Yeah.
but
That's a good word.
uh, to develop a new card game based on the popular Umbrella Academy comic book series. The card game will be launched on Kickstarter in early 2020, just a year after the comic book series was adapted into a highly successful show by Netflix. Wow, what a coincidence! We're going to capitalize on the popularity of a Netflix show, but call the comic book excruciatingly popular. Which, I gotta say, it is. The comic book is so popular that people are paying good money for the free comic book day 0 issue. So, and when I say free comic book day over here, we have a day where you can literally go into a comic shop and get free comic books from the distributors. Robert,
Yeah. Yeah.
you,
Don't think we have that here.
we have 2 of them every year.
Wow.
Yeah,
I need to move.
I mean,
Well, you need to move because of other reasons, but
the launch continues Studio 71's reign as the key distributor in the games industry, with some of the most popular games based on pop culture IP being created by the network. Amongst its successes are Joking Hazard, the second most funded Kickstarter on the platform, Binding of Isaac, Four Souls, by legendary indie video game designer Abe McMillan, and no, no. We're incredibly
Look at
excited to
all those tabs.
Look at all those tabs. Inside joke. We're incredibly excited to partner with Dark Horse Comics, Gerard Way, and Gabriel Ba to bring Umbrella Academy card game to fans next year. We've all been ardent consumers of the comic book series for years and are looking forward to launching the game. We totally did not just binge the Netflix series and say, hey guys, this is a comic book. At Studio 71 Games, we are passionate about building brands with a long tail through the combination of premium expansion products as well as fan engagement across platform, proprietary data and analytics, and out-of-the-box marketing. Buzzword, 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 buzzword. Buzzwords brought to you by Dan Weinstein. Steen is not to be confused with a Jew name. Steen, Steen, Steen. Sorry.
You're going to get arrested for being on the show, aren't you, Robert?
They're going to find me first, don't you worry.
All right.
We're thrilled to be working with Studio 71 on the Umbrella Academy card game, said Nick McWhorter, Chief Business Development Officer at Dark Horse Comics. Studio 71's previous success. Am I the only one who is thinking of The Office, The Office, where Tom decides to start Entertainment 720? Studio 71 just sounds like Entertainment 720 to me. I'm just imagining some guy with his face on a bunch of advertising merch and no business plan. It's just a terrible name. Studio 71. Not as good as the last 70 studios, but we're here.
Maybe the founder was born in 1971.
Shut up, Aaron. Don't make sense of my
Ooh.
quips.
I'm just saying.
Don't make logic out of things that shouldn't make sense. Kickstarter campaigns and strong retail relationships make them the ideal partner for us. So there's that. It is a Kickstarter project that we can look forward to in 2020. I'm sure we know someone who will definitely be interested in that. Now, Robert, you were talking about superhero movies being kind of big over there, and they're
Absolutely.
definitely the biggest cinematic offerings we have over here in the state. Don't let anybody twist it for you. But this is something that Stevie Wonder could see coming a mile away. Box office.
Dark Phoenix. Wow.
Box office. X-Men Dark Phoenix bombs with disastrous $14 million Friday.
Oh, imagine my shock.
Well, I mean, come on, man. Didn't you know that the girls save the men so often they should change it to X-Women? Literally a scene in the movie.
Shit. And then the men make the sandwiches for the women after they save them.
Right. 19 years ago, X-Men kickstarted with a little help from Spawn and Blade. A little? There were 3 fucking Blade movies, you pieces of shit. Sorry. The modern comic book superhero movie boom with $20 million.
That's spicy language for a Brit to hear.
I'm just surprised he hasn't called somebody a cunt yet. I'm actually proud of him.
Well, one doesn't always need to use one's language.
Speak for yourself.
I mean, we could bring up if you want him to hear, if you want him to say the word cunt, we could just bring up Theresa May.
That's dirty pool, Eric.
She's a sexy woman. But anyway.
Oh, jeez.
I wouldn't even.
I disavow. I'm leaving the call.
All right, Robert, you're my new co-host for the next half hour. How's that for you?
Okay, things that go downhill. You're going to lose all those listeners.
What listeners? I think we have like 4 right now. The replay's where it's at, man. Nah. 19 years ago, X-Men kickstarted with a little help from Spawn and Blade, the modern comic book superhero movie boom with a $20 million opening day. Last night, Dark Phoenix ended the franchise with a whimper, earning just $14 million on its first day. That translates into an $8 million opening day for ticket prices the day Bryan Singer's X-Men opened in theaters. So essentially, the first movie in the franchise earned $20 million. And by comparison,
I mean,
the last movie.
Can I get a whimper?
I mean, no. You've already gotten your bang. You're not getting a whimper.
You have to remember as well, the first X-Men had Patrick Stewart,
and Hugh Jackman.
But it had Patrick Stewart, very British.
Well, David Stay has theorized that Jennifer Lawrence is a man, so that really killed a lot of.
And
go ahead.
And
oh, Julia Roberts and Michelle Obama.
Oh.
Well, I mean, Michelle Obama is a man. I thought that was already proven.
I disavow.
Now, we're not going to take Julia Roberts apart, are we? Come on, boys.
No, I'm just quoting what David Stay said. Julia Roberts, Jennifer Lawrence, and Scarlett Johansson. He called them all dudes.
I'm definitely going to have a chat with this guy.
I would love to see that. He's fantastic. You're fantastic too. I'd love to host that debate, actually. Please just tell him you'll only do it here.
Where he was introduced to me.
All right. Generally speaking, a movie scoring $14 million in a single day wouldn't exactly be a disaster in the making, but when you're dealing with poorly executed, reviewed franchise title, whose initial installment opened, I added the executed in, by the way, whose initial installment opened with $20 million 19 years ago, sans 3D or IMAX, yeah, that's a loss. Dark Phoenix scored the lowest opening day for an X-Men movie in the franchise history, even lower than the $20 million Friday for the Wolverine.
Wow.
Barring a miracle, this is going to open below the Wolverine at $53 million on a weekend in 2013. $54 million.
I kind of like the Wolverine.
Well, I did too, but everybody pirated.
There was some good stuff
The Wolverine was unfairly low because it was released early, like it was leaked.
True.
So it had a bad opening because of that. The DVD sales were fantastic. X-Men only made $54 million in 2000, and X-Men First Class only made $55 million in 2011. So really, we should be looking at X-Men First Class going, y'all done fucked up. Like pretty much we knew they done fucked up when they made Jennifer Lawrence Mystique instead of whoever was Mystique with that banging ass. Oh my god.
Mm-hmm.
You remember the girl that played Mystique in the original X-Men movies? Like, you should never replace her. That's just, you don't do it.
And I mean, there's even a scene in X-Men 2 where she's in handcuffs, Robert.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I remember that scene.
That scene's been in the bank since 2003.
I've worn that part of the tape out.
Now, what's the British term for spank bank?
Spank bank.
Yeah, that's the part of your brain you keep all your fat material in.
Don't know what we'd call that over here. It's usually well locked away.
There you go. I don't care that it isn't the top
Now,
movie of the day.
would it be your wank teller?
You could call it a wank bank, I suppose.
Wank Bank. I like that. I'm going to start using that over here. Fuck y'all. Freedom Land. Woo!
We already stole their common law. We might as well.
The Secret Life of Pets 2 was pretty much going to steal the weekend anyway. So everyone already knew that. But the numbers for Secret Life of Pets 2 aren't even great, and they're still better than the X-Men movie.
Oh, God.
Yeah. What we're seeing is not somewhat disappointing not a somewhat disappointing series finale for a 19-year-old never outright rebooted X-Men series, but a performance relatively on par with Fantastic Four back in 2015, if you can recall.
Yeah.
Fantastic Four was a projected
You
open
know,
of 40 million.
I kind of liked it.
I'm gonna have to fire you for real, aren't I?
Well, it was fun. It was weird. It was kind of goofy.
Galactus was a
You know.
fucking cloud, Ayrton. He was a cloud instead of a giant purple abomination.
I thought you said Fantastic Four, the Silver Surfer. Like the first one was horrible. Like, it was a fun.
I never saw either one of them because I knew they were going to be
Yeah.
bad.
I do. That is a hard one to watch, though. I think
Like,
when you've watched it a few times, it's very difficult.
I watched the supercut of Michael Chiklis' The Thing, and that was pretty good. It was just all of his scenes. That was probably all of the Fantastic Four I ever needed to see.
I don't know. Chris Evans was in Torch.
Yes, but how is the Human Torch also going to be Captain America? They weren't twins.
I mean, he was also not blonde enough or Aryan enough.
Well, you know. Anyway, but this movie is bad and not fun for you or for your kids' reviews. An overestimation of the public's appetite for the Fantastic Four brand, and director Josh Trank infamously trashing the compromised theatrical cut on Twitter just before opening day led to a $25.7 million launch. Tracking is not an exact science, but that was at a 36% difference, and yes, 65% of the Dark Phoenix's projected $50 million launch would indeed be $32 million. Which is close. This might end up on Sunday. That's a Fable
small
and
loan
Ground
of $32 million
on a $200 million budget.
Yeah, that's not good margins.
That a fabled and groundbreaking franchise would end this way is not a little heartbreaking. Even if many of the mistakes were made by their own hands. I don't understand that sentence, but whatever. I think it is a lot heartbreaking. So, yes, it's definitely not a little heartbreaking. It's a lot heartbreaking.
Now, Robert, are you following anything we're talking about right now?
Yeah. I was with you on that. I mean, it's just a shame sometimes when they go on with these franchises and they just push them too far sometimes. Just keep milking them and milking them.
Well,
Such a shame.
That's actually a topic that we had a discussion on recently. I tried to have a lot of guests on. I'm actually going to rehash it, but one of the things that I wanted to talk about, and we got a few people on to discuss it, was the fact that some of these legacy characters like Superman's 82 this year.
Yeah.
Batman's 80. Wonder Woman will be
Really?
80 in 2 years.
Wow.
They don't look up a day over 33.
But the characters have been being published for that long, and they've been passed through the hands of the original creators for so long. that I think that the actual storylines have been diminished,
Yeah.
and I think that that's really a tragedy, and I think that there is a point in time where you kill the character off and you don't just pass the costume down. You make the new guys bring their stuff to the table.
Yeah.
Um,
Absolutely.
I mean, Captain America definitely shouldn't have been time shifted 3 or 4 times. He should have always been frozen at World War II.
Yeah.
When Barry Allen the Flash died and Wally West picked up the mantle, Barry Allen should have never come back. That the thing is these creators, like it was even touched on in the Wonder Woman article. The recent creators of Wonder Woman would never dream of putting a bondage, woman empowerment, theme into the comic book. But I think the character should have died well before that creator stopped being able to produce her. You know,
Yeah. Yeah.
don't it, copyright and longevity of legacy characters has always been a sore suit that I have, because eventually you watch something that you love become something you hate.
Yeah. They're just using the popularity of the name initially.
Well, for 79 years we never saw Batman's dick, but after 80 years we saw Batman's dick, and that's something that should have never happened in my opinion. Like, the character should have been
Now, don't
allowed to
get him
die
going.
gracefully. Who, me or him?
Him. don't get Roger going talking about Batman's dick now.
Oh yeah, Batman's dick was definitely in a recent comic book.
God.
Yeah, they definitely drew Batman's dick. That happened. They're
Just
still publishing
what
Star
a say.
Wars comics. I mean, they're still publishing Star Wars comics with Luke Skywalker in them. That was actually one of the titles. We don't really have time to cover it today. We're probably going to end up here
No, we don't.
next 10 or 15 minutes. But you know, they just republished a new story with Luke Skywalker in it. Luke Skywalker should have been dead after the third Star Wars movie. Like, that should have been the end of
Yeah.
Luke Skywalker as a character. That, like, once the original creators put you down, I think that you're done. Because nobody can treat you the
But they're
way
doing
you were
loads of
created to be
prequels,
treated.
aren't they?
Yeah. Well, yeah. But the thing is, it's like the
And now
franchise, it's kind of it's hard. Because, Spider-Man. Spider-Man was created in the 60s by Jack Lee and Stan Kirby. Or not Stan Kirby, Steve Ditko. My bad. Sorry, Stan. Sorry, Steve. But he was created in the 60s, and he's still alive today. The character's still Peter Parker for the most part. But I go to the comic book store, and this month alone, there have been 8 different individual Spider-Man comics released.
God.
They're milking the title Spider-Man because
Yeah.
that sells. And, you know, that's their company, they're allowed to do it. But as a consumer, I honestly don't think that Spider-Man should have stuck around this long. I mean, if you're going to have a Spider character, give the legacy to somebody else. Spider-Man 2099 could have picked up for a while. And then you got Miles Morales, the new Spider-Man, or the Ultimate Spider-Man. Or now you've got, Dr. Octopus, who's given himself Spider-Man powers and becomes the superior Spider-Man. But it always goes back to Peter Parker. I mean, can you imagine a character that you write and you create being sold to a giant corporation, and that corporation giving it off to some shit kicker writer who doesn't know his ass from a hole in the ground, that just ruins your creation within 6 months of writing it?
Just writes it to pump it out.
Right, just to capitalize on the name and the merchandise. I mean, would you not be turning in your grave at that point?
Yeah, it's sad.
But I mean, it's one thing if I don't know what your situation as far as children are. I have 3 children, so if I create a character and I leave it to my kid, and my kid writes it, that's one thing. It's still in my family. It's still, and my kid does what my kid does with it. But I
Yeah,
don't want Marvel doing what Marvel wants to do with it, kind of shit. You know what I mean?
absolutely. Yep.
So, but that's just
The
just my
corporation.
thing. That's just my thing. I mean, if you try and actually argue for the idea of not publishing any more Batman comics, then you might as well hang that shit up because you're going to be lynched to the stake. But in the grand scheme of things, I think that the longevity of copyright, that fucking mouse, is always what it comes back to. That fucking mouse. But anyway, I've got some outro music here, but as always, I like to kind of give our guests the last word here. What have you got going on? What should the viewers check out?
Well, first of all, thank you for having us on. It's been fun. And very interesting. So,
well, I definitely invite you to stay on for just a few more minutes so that I can give you a proper goodbye after the 2.5-minute outro.
Okay, but no tongues.
Huh?
But
no guarantees. when church drinks, he gets very affectionate.
I'll have to put up with it. You'll have to put up with the beard then.
Mine is bigger.
Whoa, let's not go there.
In all senses of the word.
They don't call me the petrified python for nothing.
But no, definitely the pleasure was all mine. I definitely enjoyed having you and Donna on. I'm sorry she had to jump out a little bit early. I understand that flu, though. I'm still getting over a little bit of the crud myself. I called it plague for a little while, but that might be a little insensitive.
I called it Ebola when I was sick, so
yeah. But no, we've got a little 2.5-minute outro. Again, please check out the links in the description. Donna's Twitter and Facebook are on there. When they get us some links for the Collered Kitten, we will update the description and have these guys back on. It was a fantastic time. Thank you again.
Thank you, Taps.
And we will.
Thank you very much. It was a blast.
We will. You guys go ahead and stay in the call. I'm gonna drop out of the Skype and go ahead and play the outro and go on mobile. So I'll be right back.
Okay, toodles.
See you in a minute.
All right, it's just me now, and here we go. Thanks again, guys, for watching, viewing, liking, and subscribing. Check out the links down below in the description, and as always, leave a comment. Let us know how we can make the show better for you guys. So until then, I will see you tomorrow with Hugh DeRugi, and hopefully Soderson and Ayrton, of course. So we will be talking race lifting in comics and how that has affected the medium. So look forward to it. Thanks again, guys.
How much responsibility do you feel that you have, particularly guys the alt-right, who, as you say, some of them have enjoyed your work, and say, I'm not one of you guys. I'm not with you guys.
They haven't enjoyed my work.
I've definitely read bits on the internet.
Read more. Read more.
Sold 2 million copies of 12 Rules for Life. You have 800,000 followers on Twitter, 1.4 million followers on YouTube. What is it that you're selling that so many people want to buy?
I don't think I'm selling anything. Selling anything. I don't think I'm selling anything. Selling anything. Selling anything. I don't think I'm selling anything. Selling anything.
So people are willing to pay a lot of money to see you speak. You know, what is it that you think that people are hungry for? They want to hear from you.
they're hungry for a discussion of the relationship between responsibility and meaning, responsibility and meaning, responsibility and meaning, the relationship between responsibility and meaning. We haven't had that discussion in our culture for 50 years. 50 years. We've concentrated on rights and privileges and freedom and impulsive pleasure. Those are all useful in their place, but they're shallow, and that's not good, because they're shallow. If people are moored shallowly, then storms wreck them, and storms come along. So I'm talking to people about how they can build a foundation underneath them that works. Storms come along, so read